This is the review for the test on Wednesday over mixed numbers, improper fractions, equivalent fractions, and comparing decimals. Okay, first of all, writing a mixed number as an improper fraction. If we check out our notes in our math journal, we can see that in order to find the improper fraction, we need to multiply the denominator times the whole number, and then we add the numerator, and our denominator will stay the same. Okay, so I'm going to multiply the 5 times the 3. So 5 times 3 is 15. And then I'm going to add the 2. So 15 plus 2 equals 17. So my numerator is going to be 17. And then my denominator will stay the same. So 5 2/3 as an improper fraction would be 17/3. Now we have to do the opposite and write 12/5 as a mixed number. So once again, we look in our journal, and it says that step 1 is to divide the numerator by the denominator. So here they took 25 and divided it by the 9. 9 went into 25 2 whole times with the remainder of 7. So 2 whole, there's our remainder of 7, and the denominator stays the same. So we're going to do the same thing to this example. We have 12/5, so we're going to work 12 divided by 5. 5 goes into 12 2 whole times, which will use up 10 of our 12 pieces, with 2 pieces left over. So my mixed number is going to be 2 as the whole number, and then the remainder becomes my numerator, and the denominator stays the same. So 12/5 as a mixed number is 2 2/5. The next thing we need to be able to do for this test is to identify and create equivalent fractions. So if we check our journal, here's our page on equivalent fractions. So we can see that in order to figure out if the fractions were equivalent or not, we check to see what it was multiplied or divided by. And if it was multiplied or divided by the same thing, then it was equivalent. If 2 different numbers were used, then it was not equivalent. So here's our first problem. Which set of fractions are all equivalent to 2/3? So I need to test these with 2/3 to see what the multiplier would be. So then my first fraction here in option A is 4/6. So I take 2/3 and 4/6, and I check to see what the multiplier would be. So that would be times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, and 3 times 2 is 6. So this one is equivalent. Then I take my next one. 2/3 and 12/18. 2 times 6 is 12, and 3 times 6 is 18. The same number is used, so 12/18 is also equivalent. I'm going to check my last one, 14/24. Let's see, 2/3 equals 14/24. And I'm going to check for my multiplier. 2 times 7 would be 14, but 3 times 8 would be 24. These do not match, so this one is not equivalent. Okay, I'm going to check my next set. My first one is 6/9. So 2/3 and 6/9. 2 times 3 is 6, and 3 times 3 is 9. The multiplier matches, so 6/9 is equivalent. Then my next set, 10/15. So 2/3 and 10/15. I check my multiplier. 2 times 5 is 10, and 3 times 5 is 15. So 10/15 is also equivalent to 2/3. And then I have 18/27. Okay, so 2/3 and 18/27. 2 times 9 is 18, and 3 times 9 is 27. The multiplier matches, so this one is also equivalent to 2/3. So which set of fractions are all equivalent to 2/3? That would be B. Okay, here's my final problem. Mr. Hilbert works for a bakery delivering bread to grocery stores. He works 4 days a week and drives a different route each day. He drives 32.5 miles on Monday, 32 900 miles on Tuesday, 23 7/10 miles on Thursday, and 32 5/54 miles on Friday. Which list shows the distances in order from longest to shortest? The longest to shortest would be the same thing as greatest to least. So that's important. I need to pay attention and make sure that when I start putting them in order, I go from greatest to least. So I'm going to start by rewriting the decimals in order. I'm sorry, not in order, but lined up with the decimal point. So my first decimal was 32 5/10. My second one was 32 900. My third one was 23 7/10. And my final one was 32 5/54. So I'm going to have 4 decimals. And I'm going to go from the greatest to the least. Okay, if we check our journal to see what our strategies were, here's our page on comparing and ordering decimals. We lined up our decimal points, and our next step is to check those whole numbers and then focus on the tenths. So if I check my whole numbers, I can see that 32, 32, 23, 32. So this one is smaller than the rest of them. So I'm going to go ahead and write it as the least on my list. And then I'm going to take it out of my set. Okay, then I need to focus on the tenths place. So I have 5/10, 0/10, or 5/10. Well, I know that this one is going to be the least because 0/10 is less than 5. So I'm going to go ahead and write that as my next smallest decimal. 32 900. And then I can take it off my list. So now it's between these two final decimals. They both have 32 as whole numbers, and they both have 5/10. So if I consult my notes in my math journal, it says that if they are the same, I need to look to the right for a tiebreaker. So I need to go next door to the hundredths place. So I check, and this first one has 5/10 and nothing. This one has 5/10 and something. And remember, we talked about in class that something is always more than nothing, which means that 32 and 54 hundredths is going to be my greatest. Which means my second greatest will be 32 and 5/10. So those are the skills that you'll need to practice for our test on Wednesday.